Hello and welcome to the Kick in the Creatives podcast, hosted by myself, Sandra Busby, and my fellow creative Tara Roskell, offering you interviews, inspiration, motivation, and a gentle prod in the right direction. And for lots more information, challenges, and other useful tools to help you get creating, you can go to kickinthecreatives.com. And of course, this is where you can also find today's show notes. Enjoy the show. Welcome to today's episode where we're talking about how small things make a big difference in our art. Now, this is part 2. As I was editing part 1, I realised we'd got to about 47 minutes and we still had about the same to go. So I decided to split the episode into 2. And today we are picking up right where we left off. So enjoy the show. Okay, well, let's go back to learning. Okay, so one of the things that made a big difference to me when I was learning was finally committing to going straight in with a pen. Because I used to always like the safety net of the pencil because I could always rub it out. And my early works were always covered in rubbing out lines and rubbing out marks, and you still get the indentation of the pencil marks, and you're like, oh, but at least I could rub it out. Actually, what really the best drawings that are in pencil that I have ever seen are the ones where the artist makes light lines with a pencil and then they darken the ones that are right and they leave the ones that are wrong behind. And that gives a pencil drawing so much energy. It's great. It's like you can see the workings out that went on behind the drawing. So if I was going to use a pencil now, I would first of all get rid of the eraser. I would not erase. I would go in very lightly and loosely, and then I would then darken the lines that I'm happy with, and I would leave it, and I'd leave those lines in. However, for me, one of the big things that changed my way of working and the results of my sketching was when I decided, right, that's it, I'm getting rid of the pencil, I'm going straight in with a pen, and it is what it is. And then, of course, yes, I still went wrong. I'd be, oh, damn it. And then I'd have to do a line again. But then again, the lines were left behind, and you're left with this sketch where the mistakes are there. And again, I'd darken the line, because you can do this with pen. You can still work really lightly with a pen, depending on what kind of pen it is, of course. And then you kind of just solidify those ones that you're really happy with. And that made a big difference to me, because it stopped me rubbing things. It stopped me being tempted to rub things out. And it taught me that actually sometimes the best sketches are the ones that aren't perfect first time. In fact, they are better than the ones that are perfect first time, because actually when you get a very perfect sketch drawn using just that one line that's straight away perfect, it can look slightly sterile and static. Whereas you do a sketch that's not perfect first time, and you're having to actually adjust that bit and darken that bit, you're left with a sketch that's fantastic, because you've got the perfect sketch, but along the way you've also got the lines that it took you to get to that perfect sketch. So it almost tells a story of how it unfolded. So that was a big change for me in my sketchbook, going straight in with pen, forgetting about the pencil, and just embracing those mistakes and using it as part of what gives that sketch its energy.
When did you start? When did you start drawing in pen? Is that since you've been doing Kick in the Creatives?
Yes, I think it is, because I used to do... say that actually. I'm just thinking back now. So yes, I used to draw in pencil, and I would... want it to be perfect, and then I'd always, in fact, even when I first went in with pen, I've got to say this, because this is being completely honest, and I've just thought about this. What I would do is I would sketch in pencil first, and then go over the perfect lines with the pen, and then rub out the pencil marks, and then wonder why I was left with this kind of static and sterile looking
pen drawing
thing, But I used to be a perfectionist, so all my drawings would be like perfect little drawings in my sketchbook. And it's not to say they were bad drawings, they weren't. But they were drawings, they weren't sketches. Very, very big difference in a drawing, I think, and a sketch. And I think I love the energy of a sketch. So I think, and then I used to do biro, because actually biro is really good for doing dark lines and really fine, like thin and light lines, because they do respond to pressure. So that's that. Whereas if you used a fine liner pen, it doesn't matter how hard you put or soft, they're still going to be the same darkness, aren't they? So I found biro was good for that. But again, I was drawing. Well, you remember when we met up in London, and I did a sketch on a train, but it was still this perfect little drawing of a perfect, little girl, and there was no energy to it.
It was really good.
Not a bad drawing.
It was a really good drawing.
But it's not. But it still wasn't a lively drawing, which was what I was trying to aim for. I was trying to aim to give my drawings a bit more life. Then you gave me that god-awful thing that you put in my hand and said, draw with that. And it was a chunky marker. And I was like, oh, my God, that's awful. But it did. And I don't know if I tried a brush pen, and I hated that. I thought it was horrible.
Yeah, I love it.
However, I suppose what I did learn from those things is, my God, that's hideous. But actually, it hasn't ruined my life trying those things. It has made me think, oh, okay, perhaps I'll try a few more things like that. And now I love going in with a pen, and I can do some really lively sketches. And one of my favourite ones, I think one of the favourite sketches I've ever done, is of a man in a park with a cap on, sitting on a bench. And I went straight in with Joy. Oh, that's it, a Lamy Joy pen.
Fountain pen.
And it's like a calligraphy pen. So it probably took me, I reckon, about a minute and a half to do that drawing. It was one of my favourite sketches I ever did. I went straight in with a pen. It was a calligraphy pen, so it was a big, bold black pen. And yet I could never have got that I could never have achieved that with a pencil. Because it had the lively lines, it had the broad nib, which meant they were varied lines. And I think that was a sketch that really sold it to me. I thought, no, I'm never going to work with pencil again. Pencils are really boring. Plus the fact, when you work with a pencil, what happens is your sketch tends to then eventually rub off onto the page next to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And then they never stay as solid. So the pens are great because they last. They last a lot longer.
But now we've said how bad pencils are, can I go on to about pencils?
Yeah.
Well, I want to say there is nothing wrong with pencil at all. To be honest, neither of us actually really sketch in pencil now. But I remember when I used to. This is when I was a teenager, and I remember somebody first said to me, if you're drawing, you want to be using at least a 2B or softer. Obviously not for technical drawing. And it's like, oh my God, there you are. You've been using the old HB, the standard pencil that you'd buy for school or whatever. And they're so hard that trying to shade with them is like virtually impossible. It's just all scratchy. And you switch to a 2B or softer, and you can suddenly get all these different tones. And I remember one of my favourite drawings I ever did was when I was probably about 15. And it was of this teddy bear. But I really took my time drawing all the fur. And I think I was using probably a 4B or a 6B pencil, but using that softness just actually gave the softness to the fur as well. And you can just get really intense shadows, can't you? And really light lights with something like that.
Yeah, definitely. I think a 2B and a 4B, I think, is probably the two I'd have if I had to choose.
They go up even more now, because when I was a kid, I think the maximum was 6B. Now you get 9s, can't you? 9B. I don't think it goes up any higher.
You can get 9B.
Yeah. But when I was a kid, it was 6.
The thing is as well, with the pencil, if you use a pencil for a dark shade, like say for instance a 6B, you're going to get quite a darker shade just by using it as you would normally. Now you could say, okay, well I could just press a lot harder with my 2B to create a darker shade. But the only problem with pencil, and this is one thing I don't like about pencil, is if you do decide to press a bit harder, it can suddenly go really shiny.
Yeah, I
like,
hate
do you know
that.
what I mean? It's almost like a more polished, like a burnished look,
Yeah.
and that's just not nice. It's not nice at all. So that's why it's good if you're going to try and go darker. Try to go for a softer lead and use it to the same degree of pressure, rather than just going harder with your 2B, because you're just going to get a shiny drawing then, which I
think
don't
what
like.
frustrates me with pencil as well is you can never get a black, you know, with an ordinary pencil anyway.
No.
You can if you buy different ones.
To me, the difference between a pencil drawing and, say, a pen drawing or a painting even, so like watercolours, right, they can be really... What used to put me off watercolours is whenever I think of or thought of a watercolour, I used to think, oh, they're just so wishy-washy. And there's no real... They're just wishy-washy.
Yeah.
And when you look at a lot of watercolour paintings, that's exactly what they are. They're wishy-washy. And I think it's because when you put your paint on, when you paint your watercolour on, you don't realise that actually dry a lot lighter. But also, people have a habit of putting so much water in, and then they forget they dry lighter. And actually, you can go in really intensely with watercolour and make them a lot more vibrant. But people seem to be frightened of doing that. Not the experienced ones, but the more inexperienced ones.
Isn't it?
So, and I feel like a pencil drawing and a pen drawing is the difference between a wishy-washy watercolour and an intense oil painting, do you know what I mean? It's just, it can look a bit bland. I guess is the word I'm looking for.
Was it Carrie Waller? What's her?
Carrie Waller.
Is that her last name, Waller? Or was it Carrie Waller?
Carrie Routes Waller. We've interviewed her.
Yeah,
before,
I mean, her watercolours. Go back to one of her interviews if you can find it. We've got a list of all our podcast interviews. She does the most amazing watercolours. And I think the first time I saw her work, I think you introduced me to her. I was like, that doesn't even look like watercolour. She'd got such intense darks. And I think I actually said something to her on the podcast. It's like, wow. And you just don't expect that, do you?
No, you don't. And she's insane. I mean, her work is just unbelievable, really. It's incredible. But that's a classic example of somebody who knows what they're doing with watercolour and isn't afraid of it. And who knows that actually if I go in and this is virtually looking black, it's going to turn like more of a darkish grey when it dries. You know, it's understanding that kind of thing. It's very different with acrylics and oils and coloured pencils and pencil and pen, because what you see when you put it on is what you get. Watercolours are very different. You have to kind of almost you have to kind of look forward, if you know what I mean, and know that actually when this dries, it's going to dry to a lot lighter than what I'm seeing it right now. So I'll intensify that right now. It might look way too bright right now, but in about half an hour, it's going to pale right down. And that's a sign, and again, that's a sign of a beginner, is seeing their watercolours and realising that they've got very little contrast in them because they're very wishy-washy.
There's one I've got down here that I think follows on from that quite well, which is committing to something for a period of time. And I think with something like learning watercolour, because what you just said, how you learn how watercolour dries a lot lighter and how controlling watercolour is a really, really tricky thing. I mean, I haven't mastered it yet, but I have noticed that when I've done challenges where I've done watercolour for a set period of time and it really improves. And like if you say, I'm going to do something for 30 days like watercolour, you will definitely see the difference from day 0 to day 30. Because it's almost like something clicks, but you don't even know it's clicking, which is kind of weird. Because I remember I'd be painting something and I'd be like, I could not get... You know when you try and work wet in wet and get that really nice, soft shadow effect? And I just could not do it. And it got to about day 10. And then suddenly it's like, I've just done it. Because without knowing it, you obviously suddenly get the knack. I wouldn't be able to do it again now, of mixing those colours and the consistency it has to be to do it. So I would say one thing I've really learned is commit to one thing for a period of time. That doesn't have to be forever. That's just something like 30 days. So decide that you're going to draw hands for 30 days, or you can learn the basis of watercolour, because doing that rather than saying, I want to learn how to draw and paint, and then one day doing a drawing one day doing a watercolour, one day doing ink, you're going to get nowhere compared to if you did the one thing for 30 days, then switch it up, then try the other thing.
Yeah, it's starting with a basis, and it's like what you were saying about watercolour. There's no point in thinking, I'm going to learn watercolour and then going straight in with a landscape watercolour. What you first need to do is think, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on gradients, so going from light to dark. Or I'm going to work out how I can intensify, how I can layer watercolours without getting cauliflowers. Well, first of all, you need to make sure you're not using too much water. Secondly, you need to make sure that you're going in with more pigment each time rather than less, because if you put water on top of watercolour, it's just going to cauliflower. If you put pigment, a high concentrate of pigment, it won't. You've just got to, it's knowing those basics. And it's a bit like if you want to practice drawing with pencil, if you want to learn to pencil draw. Well, there's no point in thinking, okay, I'm going to draw a dog, because you won't be able to draw a dog. What you first need to do is practice mark making. What different marks can I make with my pencil? How can I hold my pencil in a different way to create different feel to the marks? That sort of thing. Sounds really boring, but they're the foundations to what creates somebody who can draw really well, as opposed to somebody who's jumped in feet first. And, and this is precisely why I had to step back and think, do you know what? I'm trying to jump in here and I've skipped colour theory. What am I doing? I need to learn colour theory, that kind of thing. Those basics, if you take the time to learn those, you are going to move forward far, far quicker than you are if you try and jump ahead. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit like...
I don't necessarily agree.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I would have said, I suppose that the analogy I'm trying to make is if somebody wants to lose weight, the person who stops eating and fasts and doesn't eat very much at all and just has 1,000 calories a day, yeah, they'll lose weight quicker. But in the long run, the person who just, ups their exercise and a bit more and changes what they eat, it might take them a lot longer to lose the weight, but they'll keep it off. It's kind of like I always think when you try and skip ahead without doing learning those foundational skills, those life-changing things, or rather changing your lifestyle, they're the ones that actually end up sort of falling behind, don't you think?
Well, I can see what you're saying, and I can see why that would work for some people, but I can also see how people like me, for example, yes, you're probably right, and that probably is the perfect way to do things. But someone like me would be so bored that they would do one page of marks and think, oh, I'm not going to... If I've got to do this for however long, I can't... No, I'm not going to... I'm going to do it. I'm so bored. What I would rather do is set myself a project. So I'm going to do the dog that I want to draw. But when I'm doing the dog that I want to draw, let's try mark making in the dog.
Yes. So it's the same thing, I mean? But just done in a more interesting way. Yeah, I totally get that. Yes.
And if I kept doing that, I'm going to draw more because it's more interesting.
No, I totally agree. Yeah. No, I totally agree. And that sort of brings me on to doing a little bit regularly as opposed to a lot in one go. So when you're first learning to draw, it's, often the case where people go, oh, I'm going to try and aim for a whole day a week because I can't draw in the week because I work, and I'm going to try and devote my entire Saturday to drawing. Actually, sometimes that's not the way, because you're almost better to do a 5 or 10 minute drawing every day, or 15 minutes every day, than you are working for 8 hours in one day. Because first of all, you'll never be able to do 8 hours in a day. You just couldn't, however much you like doing that. You're not going to be able to pull that off, I don't think. And you learn far more doing a small exercise every day than you would trying to work on one drawing for a whole day of 1 week, And this is where the challenges are so good, isn't it? Like the sketchathon, which I'm going to be doing this September, or the blind contour drawing, that sort of thing. They take very little time, and yet you can do it daily. And I think that is you're going to learn much more doing that than the person who spends perhaps 6 hours in one day trying to draw. Don't you think?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I'm curious, are you going to be sharing your sketchathon?
I don't know, really. I've not really given it any thought. Do you know what? With social media, and I think this is another thing,
Or
which
even
we
in a
spoke.
group, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we've spoken about before, where social media can suddenly start taking over the most important thing, which is just doing it. And I stopped being so obsessed, like, oh my gosh, I've got to share this and I've got to share that. I'm like, well, if I fancy it and I've got time to do a post, then yeah, but I'm not going to hold myself to it. Do you know what I mean? I actually do need to post on Instagram because I haven't posted a progress of my donuts recently, and I really need to do that because I think the last post I did was after my blog, and I was like, I'm back, and here I am, and I haven't been back since. But I think it's because I've perhaps just not making myself feel bad for not posting if I don't get time. I think I'd rather put the time into doing the work than showing it, if you know what I mean. But yeah, I'm sure what I might do, Tara, is I might go, okay, no, I'm not going to post something every day, but I might do a post of what I've done in the last week, or actually this month I've done some sketches. These are the ones I like the best, rather than doing post after post after post. Maybe I'll do it that way.
Yeah. Okay. Have you got any more practical stuff? Because mine now goes more on to sort of the presentation side.
Well, okay, no, but before you talk about, I've got something that can lead on actually quite nicely about presenting your work, which is there is 0 point in getting yourself the really nice materials and learning all of this stuff and finally getting to a point where you're selling or you're showing on your website or you're showing on social media and you're confident enough to do that. There is 0 point in doing any of that if you take a really crappy photograph of your painting, because it doesn't matter how good your painting or your drawing is. You take a really rubbish photograph of that drawing in a really poor light with shadows all over it, it's going to look absolutely awful. So what you need to do is you need to find a spot where the light is very even, preferably perhaps north facing, where the sun isn't going to be brightly shining onto it. And these days, even the iPhone cameras are insane. I mean, I think my iPhone takes better photographs than my digital camera, my other one. Is it I don't know what I've got. Canon, is it? I don't know. I feel like I can get better photographs with my iPhone, but there is a way of doing it. Say for instance, don't take a picture when you're far away and zoom in, because that will spoil the quality of your photograph. Rather stand closer towards it. Make sure you're using a tripod so that you're not, it's going to be absolutely in focus. Make sure you focus focus it properly. These things make such a difference, because if I was to put a crappy photograph of all of my paintings on my website, nobody's ever going to buy them. Nice, good, clear, quality photographs, cropped properly so that they can see the full thing. That's how you need to be photographing your work. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. Do you agree?
Oh yeah, totally. And I think you don't need fancy equipment. I mean, you can get those things that hold a phone up that clip to the table for about a tenner, can't you?
Yeah.
Almost like a tripod, but they hold a phone. And then even if you can hand hold it, but obviously you've just got to be very steady. I mean, if you can do it outside, it's even better, isn't it? If you've got a decent day. But if not, even if you've just got some sort of lamp that you can, or a couple of lamps that you can stick either side, will really help. I remember once seeing someone's painting in the group or drawing in the group, and I said, "Oh, I love that cream paper you've used." It wasn't cream paper. It was just because it's dimly lit.
Well, also as well, you've got to be careful what kind of lights you use. You're talking about a lamp. It really does need to be a daylight bulb, because if you put any kind of warm light, if you put a warm light against your painting, you're gonna adjust the colours are going to look different. Like you say, like it'll turn. Maybe a lamp might turn a white yellow. Do you know what I mean? It's really...
Yeah, but the iPhone anyway has got lots of built-in editing tools. Yeah. So you can
Yeah.
You can tweak it and put a bit more, head it towards blue a little bit more in there. So, yeah, I mean, if you can do it daylight, but what I mean is that majority of people, unless, it depends how serious you are about it, but if you're just starting out, you probably haven't got lamps with daylight bulbs.
No.
Necessarily. So
But
I think you
pick
just
an
make the
area
best
in your
of.
house that where the light is very even, or like you say, outside or something. But otherwise, the light's even, and you haven't got the shadow of you and your phone over the top of it. That sort of thing. It does make a big difference. And and once you've got your work and you've got it on your website, you might want to frame it. And I've spoken about this lots of times before. A frame can make or break a painting. Choosing the right frame for your painting is so important. I don't really get involved in framing anymore because it's too hard to post out a frame painting unless it's a small one. But, Tara, don't you, how different a good frame can look? You've been experimenting recently, haven't you, on what certain frames can do for a painting, and it's quite incredible how different a painting can look once it's framed, and the difference between a frame that suits that painting and a frame that doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I've been experimenting digitally with this, but one thing I will say is that a mount as well can make a ton of difference. A mount, mat, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Obviously, probably not with the sort of thing you paint when it's an
Canvas.
oil painting. But if you've got like some mixed media pieces, watercolours probably, if you put a mount between them and the frame, it can just give it this feeling of space, and it makes it look more expensive and more premium, I think, doesn't it? Even doing
Definitely.
that. And I've seen people before. I've seen people buy my prints, and then they've shown it, and thanks for sharing it. But I always think, I wish it had got a mount around it. I wish it had got a bit of white space, before the frame. But it's all a matter of taste, isn't it? But I have been experimenting with some digital kind of ornate Gothic frames, which look quite cool on some of mine. Obviously, that wouldn't suit a lot of paintings.
No.
But I just wish I knew where to buy those Gothic frames now. But yeah, I mean, there are apps that I would suggest that you could use to play around with it as well. I mean, I've been using Photoshop, but you can also there's a quite cheap mock-up app we've mentioned before called FrameX. I think it's a Japanese made one because it's quite weird the way the English is written. But I think that's about a 10 or £12 a year, something like that. I've also started using one called Smartest. Have you ever tried that?
No. Oh, I think you sent me the link to that once. I might have tried it once.
Well, the one called Smartest, what I would say, if you're going to get an app, when it says this is a bit of a cheaty way to do things, when it says the in-app prices, go look at it, and it will usually say something like a year's price is maybe 60 quid or whatever, but then it will say something else about promotional price, and it will be half the amount. So what I will always do, here comes cheapskate, is I'll sign up for it on the trial. I'll immediately cancel the trial because you'll get it for as long as the trial runs, like 7 days or whatever. And then usually, if you've cancelled, at the 7-day point, they go, we've got a special offer on.
Yeah.
For the
so
lower price.
but
The Smartest is quite a nice one. What always frustrates me about these apps is they're generally very simple frames. So they'll just have a simple black frame, a simple white frame, and that's suitable for most things. And then they give you different room scenes that you can place it in. You can change the wall colours, but they don't really give you much option on how fancy the frame is. But they are a really good way to show your stuff on social media, especially if you haven't got a fancy house and you can't afford to get everything framed up, because most of us, our houses are a bit messy, aren't they? Well, mine is anyway.
Well,
Kevin's very tidy.
Or busy wallpaper or something, and you don't really want that behind it, do you? No.
Yeah, or you've already got a painting up in your room, or the decor in your house doesn't go with the painting you've just created. So these things do give you a feel of, and the person who might want to buy your piece, of what it might look like. So definitely give those a try.
And with when going back to the frame, unless you've got quite an elaborate oil painting or something like that, often just remember that less is more. If you have a really elaborate frame, you could be taking away from your painting. You want the star of the show to be your painting, and you want, I mean, don't get me wrong, you could do a tiny little watercolour, have a mount around it, and with a biggest elaborate frame around it, because that is drawing your eye directly into it. Might just look really good, you just don't know. But generally speaking, basically you just need to make sure that, when you're looking at that painting, is my painting still the star of the show here? Or am I being distracted by this huge gilt frame with all these sort of floral sort of indentations on it? You don't always need that. Do you know what I mean? I think sometimes simple is best. Another thing.
Can I just mention? I forgot to mention this. There's also another good place to find frame images if you want to do it. Obviously, you need to know how to use a photo thingy, and there's royalty-free sites, like Pexels and that. And there's one that has some really good one called Free Pick, but you do have to pay. There's a monthly fee, but I would just sign up for a month and download a load of them.
Yeah. The other thing we've spoken about before, we did a whole episode on this. And I think this is a really good episode to go back to. It went down really well, actually. We got a lot of comments on that episode. And it's about titling your painting. Is it important? And in my opinion, yes. God, if you've gone to the effort of creating a painting, at least have the creativity to title it, I'm not going to go into it all now because like I say, we've done a whole episode. Please go back and listen to that. But giving your art a title, I think, it's like, just briefly, let's talk about going around an art gallery. And this is sort of something I spoke about on that episode. You're going around an art gallery and you've got something, you've got a still life of an egg. And what's the title of the painting? Still life of an egg. Or you go to something else and it's an amazing painting and you're like, I wonder what, sparked that painting. It's so lovely. What's the title? Untitled. It drives me nuts. And I totally get that some people are just interested in the process of creating. They're somebody perhaps like you, Tara, who does paintings a lot quicker and, you're doing a whole series. You might want to title the series, but I just feel that that's a finishing touch, is giving it a title myself. That's an opinion. But like I say, we're not going to go into that now. Go back and listen to that episode. It's well worth a listen, I think, that one.
Yeah, because I told you before, I don't really care about. If I go into a gallery, I don't care what the title of the piece is. Yeah. But
I care deeply about it.
I will title my pieces because I know it means a lot. I know it means a lot to other people.
Yeah, exactly. I feel cheated if something. If having an untitled painting could be the difference between me buying that painting or not. Because I'm like, come on.
That is why I would title painting.
Yeah, definitely. I have very strong feelings about this. I think it's why we had so many comments about that episode, actually, because it got a lot of people thinking about it, didn't it? Did we have
a lot of comments on that one?
Yeah, we did. We had people saying, oh, God, I'm really thinking differently about this now. I didn't realise that this... Yeah, we had some comments. It was quite funny. Yeah.
When you do a social media post or anything like that where you're sharing your piece, try and have some sort of story to go with it. Now, you'll laugh at this because I used to think, doesn't matter. But I realised that it does matter, and it does matter, and it doesn't have to be big and deep. It could just be the type of day you were having when you painted it, or it could just be something unrelated to the painting, but something you were doing that day, and you can sort of tie it in with the painting. Or, like I've started doing, it could be something about the character you've created, or do you know what I mean? Some sort of story it brings to mind, even if it's a story that comes afterwards when you're looking at it.
Yeah.
But I think, because like we've just said about titling, although it doesn't matter to some people, it does to some others.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do. Yeah. I think it's nice to have a story. And if you haven't got a story, it's quite a handy way of getting some engagement with your painting and asking on social media, what's the story? There was somebody in our group that used to do that. She used to sketch a lot. And Eva, that was it.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
That's right. And she'd put a post up and go, what's the story? And people would be guessing what the story was about. And I thought that was great. Because, again, people won't mind you not having a story if they're allowed to give you a story.
Make it up.
Do you know what I mean?
And it can even just talk through your process, can't you? Of making it. Anything like that. It's just having something beyond. Because someone actually posted something the other day. It's an artist I really like. And I thought, I wish you'd tell me something. I know that sounds strange, but I just wish you'd tell me something about this, about how you painted it, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, so we've got to the social media part. Now what happens when somebody buys your work? Well, yeah, you could put it in a Amazon box, stuff it into, the old Amazon. We all get loads of them. Grab one that will fit the painting in, stuff a bit of, old tissue paper in there and just crinkle it up, stop it from flapping about in the box, a bit of parcel tape, slap an address on it and chuck it in the post. So the person on the other end unwraps it and thinks, oh, Amazon has been. And then they open it and think, oh, okay, what's all this horrible dirty old newspaper or whatever, or tissue paper, get that out. Oh, it's the painting. There's not a lot of thought's gone into that, really, is there? And you'd be surprised how many artists probably do it that way. How much nicer would it be if you put a bit more thought into wrapping your painting? That person has paid good money, hopefully, for your painting, hopefully what it's worth. And it's a bit of an insult then to put zero thought into the postage. You want it to be a nice experience. It's a bit like the difference between unwrapping a birthday present that has got birthday wrap on it and has had a lovely big bow with curly ribbon around it, and it's handed to you and it's like, oh, how exciting. Or somebody wraps it in a bit of newspaper or foil. Do you know what I mean? And you're like, oh, okay.
See, I wouldn't care again.
No, you see, but don't you think that it's important to put a bit of thought into wrapping your artwork? Because artwork is a bit different than even a birthday present. Somebody's paid a lot of money.
Yes, but my problem with this, right, is when I package up, and I totally get what you're saying, but when I package up an artwork, I'm so obsessed with it not getting damaged.
Oh, yes, I agree.
I do the most ridiculous. Okay, first of all, we're going to have it in some, wrap it in some not tissue, but it's other stuff. I can't remember what the name of it is. Kind of a papery, slightly waxed paper that you wrap paintings in. Mm-hmm. And then I'll like, okay, well, now I need to put some plastic around that just to make sure it doesn't, get any wet into there. Oh, now I need to put some boards in there to make sure it's damaged. Oh, now I need to put a bit of hardboard in there, so it's definitely not going to get bent. Now I need to wrap it in some bubble wrap. So
I know what you're saying. Yeah, but you're still that's being thoughtful about making sure it doesn't being damaged. But you're not going to use an old bit of Amazon cardboard box.
Oh no, I wouldn't. And I'd use a new box, obviously. Yeah. Yes.
And you'd cut it to size and you'd use clean tissue paper. Just on a very quick side note, never, ever, ever wrap an oil painting in bubble wrap. Always make sure you put tissue paper around it first, because otherwise the chemicals can react and you'll ruin your oil painting. That's just on a completely separate note. It's just come into my head. But anyway, perhaps you might think, okay, I'm going to put it in a tube because, a tube is going to protect your drawing. Great, nothing wrong with that at all. But what about putting it in a nice plastic sleeve first? What about wrapping or putting some tissue paper around the drawing and then put it into a plastic sleeve? Just something to make it, just give it that little extra, I don't know, just looks nice when you pull it out. And, things like... I don't know. I mean, what have I done before in the past when it's a canvas? So I've put I am exactly like you, Tara, where I need it to I do need to make sure it is protected. Of course I do. I don't want anything to be able to pierce it, bend it, break it. So, but yeah, like you, I wrap it in really, I've bought tissue paper, white tissue paper specifically to wrap paintings in, and I make sure they're all wrapped nicely, almost like a present. And then I put a sticker which has got one of my paintings. I put a sticker on that tissue paper, and then I will then put a business card on there as well, and then I'll wrap that in some bubble wrap and wrap that again like a present, and then I will put a receipt in there, and then I might wrap the whole thing in brown paper before putting it in the box. So it's almost like they've got a box, they open the box, and there's almost like a gift to unwrap in there. Now I could go the extra mile and put a little ribbon around it or something like that, or a handwritten message. What about a handwritten message to that person, thanking them for investing in your work, into your work, and for liking, for buying your work? Because there's no nicer feeling, is there, than when somebody spends their hard-earned money on something you've created. It's amazing. So just those little touches can make a big difference to when you open something in the post like that, don't you think?
I've been doing those. Yeah, I've been doing those handwritten messages to go out on my prints.
Yeah.
So I've made these little note things. They're about A6 size, just with my logo, thank you, and then it's just got my website address and stuff on. And it just, please email if you're interested in larger prints, originals, or, commissions, whatever. And then I've got a space in there, and I'll just put, thank you so much for supporting me. You know what I mean? I hope you like the print as much as I like painting it.
But there'd be some people out there saying, my handwriting's no good, but I don't think
that is my problem.
But you can always, if your handwriting is really, really bad, or you're dyslexic and you're struggling with your spelling and stuff like that, which a lot of people do, then just do a little smiley face with some googly eyes or something, and just put thanks so much or something with a exclamation mark or anything, or even just type something out and just sign it, hand sign it, something like that if you're worried.
I do write something, but then I think, can they actually read what I've just written? I think, at least they know I've tried.
Exactly, yeah. I think that is about it. Do you?
Yeah. Yeah, if you've got if you think of anything we've missed when we post up the podcast, just let us know in the comments.
Yeah, that'd be great.
We're not reading out the answer to our last questions because we're waiting till we get more of them, because the question actually was it was an ask us anything. So basically you can ask us any question. That could be something about our art, it could be something really silly, anything you like. So if you have any questions like that, let us know. We've got a question up on the Instagram and Facebook. So we've got a new question though, haven't we?
Yeah, but just before that, they can also do a voice question on that post, because we were hoping to create a new podcast episode answering the questions. So what we thought would be fun is if you don't have to, you can just write the questions in the thread, but there's a link to how you can record a voice question. So if you do that, we'll actually include your voice on the episode, which is asking us the question. So Tara, have you pinned those questions to the top of the group? I think we have, haven't we, in the
I think so,
Facebook
yeah,
group?
It's definitely in the Facebook group.
Yeah, so have a look.
Obviously,
check it out.
The difficulty with Instagram is we can't do that.
No, it just
we can't.
You can pin.
We can't show the link.
No.
Yeah, we can't show the link.
No.
Yeah.
No. So come to the group and have a look. Yeah. So we have a new question for you, and that is, what topic would you like us to cover in a future episode, and why? We're all about trying to produce content that you want to hear and is going to help you out. So we thought, why not actually ask you what you want? So what topic would you like us to cover in a future episode, and why? And we will then read out the answers in the next episode, and we'll pick one from your list. Yeah.
Yeah, and if we can't answer and we like the topic, we could always try and find an expert who could talk about that for us.
Yeah.
But anyway, you can let us know your answers to that question in the Facebook group, which if you haven't joined, I highly suggest you do. We'll put the question up there and on the Facebook page, and of course on Instagram, which is Kick in the Creatives.
and we hope that gave you the kick in the creatives you needed. Don't forget to pop over to our website at kickinthecreatives.com to find out how you can take part in some of our upcoming creative challenges. And of course, there you can also subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the podcast, we'd be really grateful if you would leave us a little review perhaps, or even just a star rating. If you want to find either myself or Tara online, I'm on Instagram as sandra.busby. My website is sandrabusbyart.com, and I'm on Facebook as Sandra Busby Artist. Tara, where can people find you?
You can find me on my website, which is tararoskillart.com, on Instagram and Facebook as Tara Roskill Art. And don't forget to check out and subscribe to our Kicking the Creatives newsletter. And there you can get all the information on our challenges and our podcast. You can do that via our website. Also, we've released a course, which is how to create characters and cartoons for fun. You can find a link to the course on our website, or go to kickinthecreatives.com/cartoon course.
Just on a going back to the newsletter thing, just want to make sure everyone understands that these newsletters are not spammy in any way. They only come as often as we say they're going to come, and they are not full of crap. They have. I mean, I've been so inspired by the one I got from us for this September, for the September challenges. We're just literally telling you what challenges are going to be coming up, so you don't miss out. Perhaps, the most recent podcast, anything we think that's going to help you out. So, it's definitely well worth signing up to the newsletter. And if you enjoy what we do and you'd like to help support us here at Kick in the Creatives with the costs, you can now do that by buying us a coffee. And you can find the Ko-fi link on our website. Thank you so much to Alison Cochrane. She says, thank you for everything that you do. And Alison is our latest supporter. So really, really appreciate that. If you can't help us in that way, there are other things you can do. You can share our episodes with other creatives, or you can share it to another creative group. You can write us a nice little review. It all helps us so much, and we really do appreciate any support you can give to help us out. But that's it for this week, and we will see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you did, perhaps you'd like to share it and leave a review for us on iTunes.